the next project is card catalog. Everybody know what a card catalog is? Sophia? What? Yes? But did you have some in your school? That's elementary school. I love it. And then they all disappeared. By middle school, there weren't any. But Randall, Karen, sorry to call you guys out, but all right. Maybe we can get the mic to Karen. One of the things I noticed first about card catalog is you found, and you can do that, anybody can do that if they find a card catalog, if there are any left. You can find old cards. You can find the old pen card catalog when it was around. You could find cards written in the 19th century with a certain script. You can find cards that were typewritten or printed and then added to. And I noticed the handwriting, the old librarian's handwriting was very attractive to you. That's a nice transition from the blackboards.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. And actually the piece, Jersey City Jesus, comes from the Jersey City Public Library, and that was a great library for handwriting. I mean, a lot of the cards were actually handwritten.
Yeah.
And it's so interesting because so many of these things are now things that we think about more because they're not used as much. So at the time, that would just be something that was present. I mean, another thing I sort of keep going back to is that photography, for me, led me to look for the hand and the things that were the physicality of
An
things.
irony, right?
Yeah, yeah.
Given that what most people think about photography? That you would go from something that is a technology, a visual capturing technology, which was new technology in the 19th century, and it would lead you back to handwriting. No, not an irony.
It wasn't ironic to me. I can see that now, but it was more that I knew that there were more properties. Like, I think I'm always looking for the things that undermine what we would imagine initially are just generic. And so, again, I have to go back to saying that the card catalog at the time was a very commonplace thing. So it didn't have the particularities that we now imbue on it from looking in hindsight and thinking about its obsolescence. So at the time, it was more about what are the physical material properties that can allow me to illuminate the quirks in this system.
Isn't it all quirks? The card catalog? Almost all of it?
It is. But the handwriting kind of gives an extra feel to it. So I like those. Most of them aren't handwriting, actually. They're mostly like typed.
Typed or printed.
Mm-hmm.
Karen, what's the difference between searching the stacks of a library by either online searching, here at Penn we call it Franklin, or going up to the stacks to go through the books on the shelves in Dewey Decimal or Library of Congress order? What's the difference between that on one hand and on the other hand using a card catalog? Do you remember this?
Yes, well, that's an interesting question because I'm not sure that I see all that much difference between the Franklin system and the card
Really?
catalog. In some respects, because they're listings of books.
Yeah,
Okay.
but
no, however, what I okay, yes, all right. So if you're in the card catalog is much more like being in the stacks.
it's like being in the stacks, except that subject headings can cross all across the Dewey Decimal and Library of Congress system from floor to floor, and walking through the stacks can't skip so readily.
Walking through the stacks is my preferred way of finding books. So I will go to either Franklin or I would have gone to a card catalog and probably looked for the book I was looking for and then gone up to the stacks, found that book, and then I'd start browsing the whole area because you can't find the books that are to the left and to the right of the book, usually, in either Franklin or the card catalog. Sometimes you can, but there's
Well, in
so
Franklin,
much
you
more.
definitely can't, right? You will never be able to know that the next entry is going to be just to the right of the previous book.
Yeah. So I don't remember. Can you do that in card catalogs? Is that right next to
Well,
one another? See, it's been a while.
Yeah.
So I've gotten
Hand
so
the mic
used to
over
using
to
it.
Randall. What is it, and then we'll get Davey in on this, what is it, Erica, about the eccentric idiosyncrasies of the librarians that would
know.
make one card catalog very different from another one.
I know. Well, that's the thing. I love the fact that there's a person behind this. It's a system. It's an institution. It's a system, and yet there's also there's the person who actually wrote these out or typed them out. And it's a photographic thing. There's also that sense of the people that went and used them. So that sense of them being worn, which actually kind of leads to dog ear and worn, but that sense of using that goes back to something that is important to me, which is it's something that people do. So I want all those things to be brought into your experience of it, that you recognize that, oh, people went to the library and encountered these things too, and we all had these surprises, which we may or may not have noticed. But,
right. So, Randall, they're put into a drawer. The drawer has a certain amount of space, so the front of the drawer to the back of the drawer is arbitrary based on the number of cards that a particular library stuffed into a subject heading, and everything is mixed up alphabetically. So you're going to get titles of books, authors of books, and some proliferation of subject headings, which can be minimal or maximal, in a drawer. And if you look at the drawer from the front, which is what this photographer did, you're going to see all kinds of things you will never see in any other card catalog drawer because of the randomness of the number of cards in a drawer and the randomness of the librarian who's obsessed with certain subject headings. And you're going to see words foregrounded. Is that foreshortened is the word I was looking for earlier.
Yeah.
Yeah. So you know this work, card catalog. So what's going on? Why can you imagine why this becomes found language and how this leads to the aesthetic that pretty much everybody in this room is interested in?
Wow. I have many ideas. The direction you were taking the question leads first to the whole question of how the sort order is determined, and there were a changing set of standards over the years and centuries. And
100
earlier
plus,
on, there was a lot more interpretation by individual librarians, and gradually there were union catalogs with standards and OCLC and all that stuff, and now there's less individual interpretation done. So there's that whole thing of seeing in the older cards how the individual interpretations of what fits in which category are arrived at. But there's also to your point about the sort of arbitrary nature of looking at the tops of the cards, and your earlier comment about the different hands and things. As Donald Judd said about critics of Jackson Pollock, that you don't need a narrative, you don't need a theory, that sensation itself is a justification for art, right? So the signs themselves in all their different forms, close looking like close listening is a fascinating way to devise aesthetic patterns, right? So you can go down a lot of different roads. I would imagine that it was a very rich environment for you.
Yeah, I mean, one of the things that's exciting to me about it, similar to how I felt about the blackboards, is that these things were, I have to say the present tense because that was what it was when I did it. These things were there. These crazy juxtapositions are there. And so it's kind of like saying, hey, everybody, come look. Oh, my God, look.
But you were saying, oh, my God, and other people were saying, why are you taking pictures of the card catalog, right? Let's think of some of the juxtapositions that you found, some of the found poetry you found in the card catalog.
Yeah.
I mean, I could look, I could search for it, but the two of us can probably remember some.
I can. One that's really fun is Suburban Homes, Subversive Activities,
Suburban
which has only gained in
Homes.
meaning over the years.
And Suburban Homes was closer to the front.
Mm-hmm.
Subversive Activities was further back and therefore is above. So you would read it on the flat photograph. You'd read it down.
Because of the way the focus is, I think that rather than necessarily reading like the top down like that, I tended, and maybe the viewers tend to read what's in focus first, and then what's not in focus as though it's behind it.
That's nuts. I've taken over. Sorry. Please continue. I'm still searching. Go ahead.
So I think that so often they're read. Well, it's interesting. I guess it would be helpful to be looking at them. But often they're read, like I said, top like that, but then sometimes they're read with the foreground first because that's the part in focus. So they're not, there's just a few words in each one of them, so the question of which comes first, you can play around with it. I mean, I tend to have a way that I think of it. But.
I'm looking at a pretty famous one. So you have, you guys can't really see it, but that's the card catalog looked at with Erica Baum's camera, looking into the drawer. So the first tab, which would be the last line of the poem, but the first thing you see is fasts and feasts. Now, what kind of subject heading is that? That's fantastic, right? And there's a whole bunch of cards after that. Then,
Fasts and feasts.
Fasts and feasts, typed again. Then, fat. What kind of subject heading is that? And there are a lot of cards after fat. And then,
Fate and fatalism.
Fate and fatalism. So the poem, if it's a poem, would read from top to bottom. Fate and fatalism, fasts and feasts, fasts and feasts.
But that's a fun one in a way, because the way I read that to myself is I say, oh, thank you. Okay, I'll look at that and you can. I tend to say fasts and feasts, fate and fatalism. Because it's sort of fate and fatalism is a comment on the situation of fasts and feasts. So, I mean, this is in my head. You know, it's not necessarily how anyone else is going to read it, but that's how I read it. But then again, that doesn't follow going from the bottom or going from the top. It's just, so it's sort of dictated by my idea of what it means.
Totally.
So.
Here's another one.
You're permuting the order.
Yeah.
Here's a subject heading. I have ...
Information.
And then below it, information. So when you discovered this, take us to that moment. Do you remember which catalog that was?
It probably is NYU.
Yeah,
is
NYU's
really
Bobst Library.
Very fruitful.
Yeah. So she's in NYU, which is near home.
Mm-hmm.
And you go in there and you see, oh my God, look what I found. And you take that picture and you know that's going to be in the final. What were you thinking? What were you feeling? You found it. You didn't write it. You found it.
It was very exciting. I mean, are there more here? Can we look at? There's a few others.
There's my favorite.
Okay, this I can remember more how I felt with that because.
So why don't we read it, because not everybody can see it. It says once ... and then it's Onassis Jacqueline Kennedy, 1920. Was she born in 1920? 29. Onassis Jacqueline Kennedy, 1929. Onassis Jacqueline Kennedy, 1929. And then bits of that subject heading.
So when I did that one, I had this really exciting feeling that, hey, this is history. This is so many. This is biography. It's history, and all kind of condensed into this one flattened sphere. So flattened sphere, that doesn't make sense. But anyway, flattened.
It's flattened area.
Yeah, flattened field.
Yeah.
And so how I felt, I remember it was either this one or another one similar where I felt like, oh, this is also kind of a meta narrative, meta commentary, meta history thing. So that was exciting.
Yeah.